Okay, so I was looking online and it looked like there were some other possibilities for being able to get that fine detail out of the object that you want to cast in silicone caulking. And the people had mentioned possibly thinning down the silicone. And you know, I live in China, so some of the chemicals that they had listed on there, I don't know how to find in China. So one thing people mentioned was using lighter fluid to thin down the caulking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up and see how well that this can thin down and possibly pour over my mold for a thin layer to get the surface details. Okay, so what I'm going to do is shoot some of this into my tray. Put a little caulking in there. It's definitely thinning out. I've also heard that this will shrink after, if you thin it out, when it ends up drying, it will be much smaller if you're doing a lot of it. It'll shrink. Okay, and it seems like you need quite a bit of lighter fluid to make this work. So I want this to be very, very thin. Okay, so this will be thinned down to where it can pour. I'm just going to pour it over the surface. Not too thick, just pretty thin. I'm going to take this old brush to go over. Spread everything out. This is probably more than I would need. Okay, so just make it a very thin coat. Get in all the cracks. Make sure the air bubbles get out. So I'm going to let this set up, and then I'm going to add a second thicker layer to this. I had read online that the silicone caulking, when it dries, will shrink. And so I tried to make a cast of my object and also to get some texture in my skateboard. But as you can see, there's a lot of cracking going on from where it shrank too much. Some very big cracks right here, and where the silicone was shrinking when it dried. So it makes sense that the silicone caulking that had been diluted with the lighter fluid would crack, because if you think about it, the same amount of silicone caulking has been distributed over a larger surface area. So when that would dry, there'd be a lot more tension on it and eventually get pulled apart. So I will say this is a fail. A bad fail. Okay, so straight applying silicone caulking does work. You'll get some of the air bubbles occasionally, which, you know, any flashing that you would have in a typical resin casting, you could sand off and buff out. So that's not a big deal for me personally. But if you're wanting a lot of surface detail, doing some live casting, definitely use the commercial silicone products for casting. So if you know a way of thinning down silicone caulking to get that surface detail when you're casting an object, please let me know, because I obviously could not find a way of diluting it down myself. Okay, so maybe leave a comment, leave any tips that you have for using silicone caulking. Alright, so I hope this helped you out. Get out there, make something, try to test your skills and see what you can create. See you.